People in YouTube land know. Hello, YouTube. Good morning. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm Lurie Daniel Favors. Welcome to the Lurie Daniel Favors Show. We are here on SiriusXM's Urban View, where talk empowers and becomes action. Appreciate you, YouTube community members, joining us as you do regularly. It is a beautiful thing to be able to bridge between the YouTube community and bridge you all into what we do here every day on Urban View. So we got a lot to get into today. It's a lot, I gave this warning earlier to the interview. I gave this warning earlier to the audience here on Urban View, but there's going to be a part of this conversation that my Christian community is particularly going to feel perhaps a little focused on in ways that makes you a little uncomfortable. It's not to make you uncomfortable, but it is to call us all to greatness. And so just know, my saints, my kinks, and my ain'ts, it's going to be okay. But the saints might struggle a little bit. It's going to be all right. We're going to pray your strength. So we got a lot to get into today, and I want to start by reminding you all of something that used to happen a lot. Do you guys remember during Donald Trump's first term, when he would get in trouble, something bad would happen, and people would be focused on how terrible, awful, and no good and very bad he was, and he would declare Infrastructure Week? Do you remember this? Infrastructure Week was like the catch-all phrase. It was like, oh my God, did somebody find out more people died in COVID? Infrastructure Week. Actually, that was at the end of his administration. There were so many things that he screwed up during the administration that whenever it got really, really bad, he would declare an Infrastructure Week. Now, curiously, he never actually got around to the infrastructing or building out the infrastructure, because that's what Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris did when they came into office and passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a weird way of saying basically a whole bunch of money was invested into the communities all across the country to repair roads and bridges, to expand access to broadband, to do all of the infrastructure, physical infrastructure that was going to be so necessary to help this country move to the next phase. What the Biden-Harris administration was not able to do was able to get the care economy package passed. You may recall that the infrastructure package that did get passed, because there were two of them. I know this feels like ancient information, but we got to remind ourselves of where we were at so that we understand where we are and where we're going, Sankofa. But there were two pieces of infrastructure legislation that the Democrats were trying to get passed. The first was the Inflation Reduction Act. That was going to be the hard physical infrastructure: build a road, build a train, put in a bridge, repair that whatever, and repair the dam, whatever. That was the physical infrastructure. But there was a second package that was the care economy package. That actually did not get passed, but that was going to be the type of infrastructure that was going to allow for the people who do the hard physical infrastructure to actually do it without disrupting their families. Because one of the things that came out during the Biden-Harris administration was that the type of infrastructure that got passed was the type of infrastructure that was going to benefit people who were already working in sort of hard infrastructure key areas. So if you were a white man, chances are you were going to really benefit from the infrastructure bill. If you were a man in the trades, you were going to really benefit. If you're a woman in the trades, you were as well. But those industries tend to still be gendered and skewed by gender. So the infrastructure bill that the Democrats were able to get passed, despite Republican opposition, was the type of infrastructure that was very much about roads, bridges, broadband, repairing hospitals, things of that sort. The other infrastructure package that they were trying to do during the Biden-Harris administration but were not able to do was the care economy. That was going to be the infrastructure that was going to look at who's caring for your people. Like, so if you got home health aides and the home health aides don't make no money and then they can't show up as their best selves to take care of your Mima, your Pap, you should have home health aides that are getting paid quality care. It was going to provide after school care, child care, a whole host of programs that would allow women in society, because we tend to not be as present in the hardcore physical infrastructure entities or spaces within our society. It was going to allow the spaces where we are focused to also get their infrastructure package. That part didn't happen. I'm mentioning this because Donald Trump always talked about Infrastructure Week whenever he got in trouble. It was like his get out of jail free card. And it was used so frequently that CNN back in 2019 had an article out that was called "This Phrase Has Become a Running Joke on the Trump Administration." What was the phrase? Child, the phrase was Infrastructure Week. So just like now, when there's a lot that Donald Trump might want to distract us from. And let's think about it. What might Donald Trump want to distract us from and not pay attention to? Oh, it could be the fact that on his watch, they cut access to FEMA money. And so you got over 100 people who are now lost to flood rivers in Central Texas. And it wasn't just the FEMA money that they lost. As we talked about extensively yesterday, it was also the money that was supposed to go into the meteorologists who were supposed to prepare communities. We learned about the fact that key positions in the science of weather, that industry were missing and have been missing and continue to not be present. We reminded ourselves that the head of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, when he got there, he basically said to the staff he ain't know if there was a such thing as hurricane season, even though hurricane season was about to start 2 days after he got sworn in. That type of foolishness. Of course, Donald Trump might want to distract us from that. But Donald Trump might also want to distract us from the fact that yesterday he and Pam Bondi came out and basically was like, "What? Who's Jeffrey Epstein? Don't nobody know no Jeffrey Epstein. What client list? What? Who said we got a list? Who said there was evidence? Who said we was gonna overthrow the deep state? Not me. Nope. I didn't do it. Did you do it, Cash Patel? Nope. Did you do it, Pam Bondi? Nope. Nobody here. Don't nobody know no Jeffrey Epstein." So yesterday, despite the fact that this man ran half of his campaign was, we're going to open up the Jeffrey Epstein files. We're going to find out who all the sexual predators are. And then when Elon was like, Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. And when the Epstein files that were released was like, Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. And then MAGA was like, we want the Epstein files. Until Donald Trump's name was in. They were like, who Epstein? We don't even know him. Well, yesterday, I think Donald Trump thought that he could just, who Epstein? We don't even know him, his way out of the situation. Because remember a couple of weeks ago when Pam Bondi was like, I have the list of people who were on the Epstein Island. I have the list of people who were in the files. It's on my desk right now. I'm looking at it right now. Even though I'm not in my desk, if I were in my office, I could pick it up and I could show it to you right now. That's almost a direct quote, but not quite. But basically, that's what the woman was saying. And now all of a sudden, ain't no files, ain't no investigation, ain't no nothing. So Donald Trump don't know nothing about it. They dropped that news yesterday. And MAGA lost their entire red brain and mind. They lost the brine. They lost all of it. And they were really, really upset. So, of course, it makes sense that Donald Trump would want to revert back to his old ways of infrastructure weaken his way out of a situation. Now, during his first term, the CNN report says basically the following. Like the Bermuda Triangle or Spinal Tap's new drummer, the word infrastructure week seems to be cursed. No fewer than 7 times, including this very week, has Trump's White House declared that its chosen theme of a week would be infrastructure, only to see those plans thwarted, often by the president himself. So back in 2019, CNN, they all knew this man needed a get out of jail free card. And he actually got out of jail free. But do you see what I did there? I'm sorry. I love me a good corny joke, Chad. I really do, because he get out of jail free. He was supposed to go to jail, 34 felonies, not in jail. All right, whatever. Maybe not. Anyway, but he needed a get out of jail free card. And then this article goes on to recount multiple times when his first administration, Donald Trump was like, infrastructure, to distract. What is the infrastructure week of this term? I know what the infrastructure week of this term is. It's tariffs. Tariffs are the infrastructure of this term. That is Donald Trump's chosen get out of jail free card. He knows that when he starts talking tariffs, people start talking tariffs and they stop talking about the thing he don't want them to talk about. And so, of course, if you wanted to distract people from the Epstein files that you in, but you don't want nobody to know that you into the depths of which you are in it, and so you are going to not release it, even though you told your entire clan that you was going to release it, yes, he would want to distract from that. Yes, he would want to distract from the raging floodwaters, which we got some more news and updates on, but he basically is now reverting to tariffs. And he's talking about tariffs as he's live tweeting from the publicly owned bathroom known as the White House shitter, and basically saying that he is going to now tell all those countries who are supposed to be coming up with these deals that they've got just a little bit more time before Donald Trump brings down the hammer. Let's back up a bit. Do you remember Liberation Day? Liberation Day was so liberating. It was on April the 2nd, Liberation Day of 2025, and Donald Trump basically tariffed everybody. He was like, you get a tariff, and you get a tariff, and you get a tariff. Even though people was like, hey, man, every time you give out all these tariffs, we the people that's going to be paying them tariffs, and that's a problem. And remember how on Liberation Day, April the 2nd, the markets heard that, like, everybody was going to get tariffs, including islands that had no actual people on it. Do you remember the island of penguins that was also getting a tariff because they produced this chart that basically was pulled out of the trash bin of AI's ass and is supposed to count for like governmental science or research? It was like a whole ass Etch-a-Sketch card. Remember, he held it up and looked like a whole ass fool? Well, when he did that and the markets crashed, Do you remember how people who were savvy enough to see that what was about to happen? This was before we knew Trump was a taco. Trump always chickens out. Before he began chickening out regularly, people who were paying attention were like, hey, he just crashed the markets. Let me go ahead and scoop up some of these cheap stocks that just got cheaper because he just crashed the markets. And I predict that these stocks are going to rise again because there was no way he was going to be able to keep them tariffs in place. Ding dong. That is exactly what happened. So after April 2nd, and I'm just reminding you because you should remember because this was recent. This was just a couple months ago. April 2nd, he issues his warning. He's got, Liberation Day tariffs and China got like 145% tariffs. It was ridiculous. And the markets crashed. The economy was terrible. And so Donald Trump, within a week, because he is weak, had to roll them back. And he rolled them back, but he paused it. Remember, it was a pause. He said, well, we're going to roll back the tariffs because apparently it's causing a lot of economic destruction. Yeah, you ding dong, because anybody who understands basic economics, hell, my kindergarten-aged nephews and nieces could have understood what was about to happen. And he basically paused the tariffs. Do you guys remember this? And when he paused the tariffs, they decided that they were going to keep them at the low rate of 10%. But the challenge with that was that the low rate of 10% tariffs was actually higher than what we were paying with a whole bunch of other countries already. So for example, with the UK, we had a 3% tariff rate? And he was like, well, now it's going to be at the low rate of 10%. And people were so geeked out about the fact that the tariffs had been so high initially when he announced them on Liberation Day that people were breathing a sigh of relief about bringing the tariffs down to 10% until people was like, wait a minute, why we got a 10% tariff with the UK when we used to have a 3% tariff with the UK? That's basically how Liberation Day went. But there was a key part to Liberation Day. Do you remember the key part to Liberation Day? The key part to Liberation Day was, after they paused it, that they were going to come up with all of these deals. They were going to come up with deals. Remember, 90 deals in 90 days. 90 countries, 90 deals, 90. That's what they was going to do. Remember that? I remember that. Y'all don't remember that? I remember that. I know y'all remember that. Shout out to Jermaine DFW. Appreciate you. See the love in the chat. And so after that was happening, and then they decided to suspend the tariffs. We're in the 90 days. So we were supposed to be getting deals. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Today's 97. Today is day 97. We were supposed to have these deals wrapped up, tied up, and tangled up. Ain't no deals though. Oh, you know what? We did actually get there was a deal with the UK did basically get inked at the 10% level, so raised tariffs there. Oh, and then Vietnam. We got to deal with Vietnam. That I heard that they got their tariffs deals locked in. It was like 25, 35, 45%, something like that. But then when we found out later or yesterday is that all the tariffs that he's going to bring back, he's then also going to pause again until August. The man is a whole ass fool. He is live tweeting from the shitter in the White House about what he's going to do with the tariffs. And so now we have until he raised the tariffs again. Hey, everybody going to get an extra tariff. You got a tariff, you got a tariff, everybody gets a tariff. So nobody's talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Talk about the tariffs. But the tariffs are going to be paused until August the 1st. So we want you to talk about the tariffs for the next month. But we don't want you to talk about anything else, even though the tariffs aren't actually going to be in place until August 1st. And then I suspect that on August 1st, they're also going to be paused again. But again, we have to think about why it is we are being distracted in this way, because one of the countries he put a tariff on was South Korea. He put a 25% tariff on South Korea. We have no trade deficit with South Korea. South Korea and America have a free trade agreement. There's no deficit there. But this is Donald Trump, and he'd rather us focus on that than the things we're going to talk about right now. So let's talk about those things we're going to talk about right now. Like the fact that FEMA ain't going to do nothing for them people in Texas. You know how I know? Because of this. FEMA, according to Donald Trump, has not been a very successful experience. Amina, if you could please pull that clip. I want you all to listen. This is Donald J. Trump. Hold on, let me see. I can't remember what number clip it is, Amina. Do you see it? You got it? Okay. I want you all to listen to this clip. YouTube, I'm going to show it to y'all on the internets or whatever you want to call this thing. I'm going to share my screen. I want y'all to listen to this clip as Donald Trump is talking about the Federal Emergency Management Agency. He's talking about FEMA. I want you to listen to this because FEMA is supposed to come to the rescue. They're supposed to be there for you. Listen to what Donald Trump says about FEMA.
Wean off of FEMA, and we want to bring it down to the state level. A little bit like education, we're moving it back to the states. So the governors can handle it. That's why they're governors now. If they can't handle it, they shouldn't be governor. But these governors can handle it, and they'll work in conjunction with other governors. They'll give each other a hand. But the FEMA thing has not been a very successful experiment. Very, very expensive, and it doesn't get the job done. You saw what happened in North Carolina under the past administration. And when we got in, we did a great job for North Carolina, brought it back. But it was a disaster, FEMA. And it has not worked out well. It's extremely expensive. And again, when you have a tornado or a hurricane or you have a problem of any kind, in a state, that's what you have governors for. They're supposed to fix those problems. And it's much more local, and they'll develop a system, and I think it'll be a great system.
Yeah, he basically said, bitch, you on your own. Donald Trump don't care about the people. Remember when Kanye was like, George Bush does not care about black people? And we was like, yes, son. Yes, King. That's so deep. He was right. I don't know what happened. But anyway, basically, Donald Trump is saying the FEMA program, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which all of the states pay into, he said it's too expensive, so fuck you and your problems. That's basically what he's saying, because Donald Trump don't care about the people. And we know Donald Trump don't care about the people because he's told you he does not care about the people. But in addition to the fact that he's now saying FEMA is a failed experiment, and he said, did you hear what he said there? The governors should be responsible for doing this. That's what governors are for. So the question I have is, if I'm a governor and my state, like if I'm the governor of California or New York or any of the other Democratic states that give more money to the federal government than they take back, and part of the money that we give to the federal government is supposed to cover the Federal Emergency Management Agency, so that when we have national disasters that exceed the scope of a state agency or a group of state agencies, plural, to resolve it on their own, that's when the federal government is supposed to step in. That's why we pay taxes to the federal government. Now, I want to say something very clear, because I don't want anyone to be confused about what I am about to say. You must absolutely pay your taxes. You do not want to be a Wesley Sniped or Lauren Hill and get your ass tossed in jail because you didn't pay your taxes. So please do not take what I'm about to say as any indication that you should not pay your taxes. Pay your taxes, pay your taxes, pay your taxes. But why the fuck are we paying taxes if you just gonna say the government don't work and you got to do it on your own? Why, if I am a governor of a democratically led state, why would I keep paying money to the federal government to do the things that the federal government is supposed to do if you just gonna take the money and say the federal government can't do them things? Give me my money back. Because that belongs to my people. That belongs to the people in my state. And so when they say things like it's a failed experiment and the governor should be handling it, and yet we heard clips previously, clips that were specifically related to the flooding that's happening in Central Texas, where basically state representatives from the state of Texas have said this is where federal government has to step in, because local people cannot necessarily do what a federal government can do. The amount of coordination, the level of technology that is needed. It's not just about, does Jim Bob down the road have a good old John Deere tractor that he can use to get that log on out the way. You need government. You need the federal government to be able to do these things. But he is like, no, forget you. We just gonna take your money though. We're going to take your money, though. But I think somebody should be asking some questions like, why are we paying taxes to a federal government if you're just going to not do any of the services? We pay taxes to the federal government. Y'all just cut food for hungry people. We pay taxes to the federal government. You just cut housing for people who don't have homes. You just cut health care. You just cut mental illness support. You cut everything. Did you cut our taxes, though? No. But you did cut taxes for the billionaires. So there's that. But according to Mother Jones, in additional news on FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency is making significant changes to how it will respond to disasters on the ground this season, including ending federal door-to-door canvassing of survivors in disaster areas. I'm sorry, what? So FEMA's supposed to go door to door during disasters like these floods, because they have the knowledge about how to navigate these disaster zones. They have the technology that would allow them to navigate these disaster zones, and they're supposed to go door to door to check on survivors, because if there are people in the house who are injured and they don't have anyone to check on them, then FEMA is supposed to do that, because that's what government does. Government is supposed to provide for the people the things that they cannot provide for themselves as individuals. But according to Mother Jones, a memo reviewed by Wired dated May 2nd and addressed to regional FEMA leaders from Cameron Hamilton, a senior official performing the duties of the administrator. Pause. That means basically he ain't the official. He's performing the duties. He's acting. So this is an acting official who's acting like he's got some authority, and he can only do that because he's backed by the Republican administration. Basically said that the program officers were instructed to, quote, take steps to implement 5 key reforms for the upcoming hurricane and wildfire season. That's the one we're in right now. 5 key reforms to update this system that we are for the season that we are in right now. The memo states that FEMA will discontinue unaccompanied FEMA door-to-door canvassing to focus on survivor outreach and assistance registration capabilities in more targeted venues, meaning you on your own. If that house fell on your house, if that roof or that tree that fell on your roof ended up pinning you underneath it, don't expect FEMA to come knocking at your door. You better hope a dog or somebody, you got a pet? Do you have a pigeon? that you could say, go, Timmy, go, fly and find help? Like, do you have a Lassie dog who could do that for you? Because if you don't, the government ain't going to do that for you. And this is important, and it's a huge about face because according to the report, for years, FEMA had deployed staff to travel door to door in disaster areas, interacting directly with survivors in their homes. That's what they were doing during the Biden-Harris administration in North Carolina. And it was so crazy that Donald Trump said, then we came in, we took over what happened in North Carolina. It was amazing. Am I the only one old enough to remember when North Carolina was like, hey, man, we need some more money. Can you extend the time for us to get reimbursed for our disaster relief? And Donald Trump was like, fuck you, no. Like, that just happened. And he sat there in that ugly-ass Oval Office with that ugly-ass decor talking about we did wonderful things for North Carolina. And none of the journalists in that room were like, wait a minute, didn't you also say no when they issued a request for additional support? And support that Biden had promised them? That you was like, nah, son, fuck you and your problems? I'm just saying, I feel like I be the only one that be remembering these things, but then I remember Urban View. Y'all got me because y'all be remembering these things as well. But what we also need to be clear about is that the death toll that is ravaging this Texas community is continuing to rise. As of today, the numbers of the lost have reached beyond 100. They're still searching for a counselor and 10 additional girls. I was reading stories about how 2 of the camp counselors, who happen to be Latinas, go figure, 2 of the camp counselors basically are solely responsible for saving like 30 of these young girls, waking them up, getting them, putting them through windows, helping them crawl up, out, tying sheets together so that the girls could hold on to the sheet so they wouldn't get washed away. It's terrible. It is absolutely terrible. And so when when Ted Cruz, Rafael Cruz, the Canadian turned American, wait a minute. He's a whole ass Canadian turned American. Shouldn't he be getting deported too? Moving on. Ted Cruz, Canadian turned American. Rafael is his real name. Rafael, who is Cancun Cruz of the last time when Texas had a disaster, one of many, and it was a snow-related, weather-related disaster and it was super, super cold because Texas has an energy grid that is its own energy grid, and so they generate their own energy. And interestingly enough, the governor of Texas has been bragging about the strength of the Texas energy grid and how you guys have been really doing great recently, and he doesn't seem to ever credit the solar power generators that is feeding energy into you all because a lot of you're getting more solar panels on your houses. Good for you for that. I just got them on mine. I'm just saying, Greg Abbott, you might want to give credit where credit's due, particularly because it's a part of this most recent terrible bitch-ass bill that they signed into law. Solar credits and panels for energy refurbishing of your homes is now on the chopping block. So there's that. But anyway, Ted Rafael, Canadian now American Cruz, was in Athens, Greece. Because remember, during that last disaster, when it was really cold outside, where was Ted Cruz? In Cancun. That's why we call him Cancun Cruz. But he was in Athens, Greece, when this disaster happened. And he was in Athens, Greece, despite the fact that even as people were being pulled out of the water, he was able to go home, but he was like, no. Do you guys remember when there were fires and the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, they tried to rip her a new one because they said when she was overseas, where was she at? Maybe in Ukraine she was at something that President Biden had asked her to do right as the fires was getting started in Los Angeles. She was working her black ass job officially on behalf of the United States of America, and she was overseas. And then remember when she took the military flight back, and she took a military flight instead of a charter flight or a private flight because she wanted to be able to have full communication capacity the entire time she was on that flight. And do you remember how these white nationalists came for that woman and acted like she was doing everything but calling on the name of Black Jesus when she was actually doing her whole ass job? Well, Ted Rafael, Canadian turned American Cruz, we got something for you. Amina, please pull this clip. This is Rafael Cruz talking to a reporter about the death toll and what was happening. But Ted Cruz don't want to talk about that. Ted Cruz want to talk about Joe Biden. Ted Cruz want to talk about Joe Biden because the Republicans always want to talk about Joe Biden when they don't want to have you focus on what they have done. I want you all, hold on, YouTube, I almost played y'all and I can't play my peoples now. I got to get y'all on the share screen. Okay, we're going to share the screen. Amina, please play this clip.
If you look at back when you had the horrific hurricane damage in North Carolina, we saw the Biden administration politicizing FEMA. That was grossly...
What do you mean by... I mean, I want to stick to this disaster.
But
we
hold
don't
on,
need to get into the weeds there. But.
Well, but hold on. You wanted to attack President Trump over FEMA, and I wanted to point this out.
Did President Trump not say that he's trying to eliminate FEMA? I'm not attacking.
So we had a FEMA employee, a supervisor who put in writing under Joe Biden, do not provide hurricane relief to houses that have Trump flags or Trump signs. That's a level of politicization. Now, she lost her job. She was fired over that.
So what is the solution in your mind to
the solution
is change FEMA in any way?
Is to make FEMA effective and nimble on the ground.
So that was the whole last lie. That part about an official who said give FEMA help to houses that have flags on it. That's a whole last lie. But that's what they do. They lie. And I remember the politicization that took place in North Carolina with those hurricanes. And you remember what the politicization was? When the Biden-Harris administration had FEMA on the ground. We would see videos of Republicans saying, there's no FEMA. No FEMA has come. FEMA who? FEMA where? FEMA why? But they would be doing all of these theatrics in front of a whole ass FEMA truck. Or like they would be doing these theatrics in front of a FEMA distribution line. And we was like, wait a minute, it's FEMA right behind you. There they go. They right behind you. And they was like, FEMA who? FEMA where? I'm clutching my alabaster FEMA pearls because they not here. And then they were complaining about the $750 until they realized, oh, wait, people actually understand that the $750 that FEMA was giving out in North Carolina, that was the minimum or that was the maximum that they could get because Congress had refused to expand the amount of money. A Republican-led Congress had refused to expand the amount of money that you were supposed to be able to distribute for these disasters. And that $750 that got very politicized, we ended up finding out, oh, wait, that's just one of many sources of income. Do you remember that? Because I do. I remember. Do you remember? Ooh, how they lie in our face. I remember these things. I know I'm not the only one, but I'm just saying it's bad. And I believe that it was Michael Harriot who quite adeptly pointed out something very important about Rafael Cruz. What was it? He said, Rafael Cruz, hold on, this is a very important point, and I meant to have this in my notes. I did not get this in my notes. Oh, Ted Cruz is he's living like a bad bitch. Like when you think about the definition of a bad bitch, that is Ted Rafael Canadian turned American Cruz. And here is what Michael Harriot, phenomenal author extraordinaire, says about how we know Ted Cruz is a bad bitch. Number one, he loves getting flued out, and he do. Number two, he lie about where his money come from. He has a terrible personality, but ain't nobody gonna kick him out. He's unreliable as fuck. He loves rich guys, won't do shit for anybody else unless they got money. He's always on vacation. As Michael Harriot says, Ted Cruz is really living like a bad bitch. So shout out to bad bitch Cruz. And shout out to Michael Harriot for being an amazing human being. But here's what I really want to get into for Urban View. Y'all, I told y'all, the Saints, Caints, and Aints, we're gonna have a challenge today. We're gonna have a conversation because we have just learned that the Donald Trump administration, under the leadership of the Republican Party, has decided that the IRS is going to change the rules for the pulpit. Now, my saints, my caints, and my ain'ts, I need you to pay attention. In a court filing, the tax agency says that a decades-old ban, this is a direct quote, a decades-old ban on campaigning by tax-exempt groups should not apply to houses of worship speaking to their own members. As a nonprofit leader, I'm an executive director of a legal nonprofit organization. We focus on using the law to make our communities' lives better. It's an amazing organization, 39 years old. It'll be in our 40th year next year. Hoo-hoo, yay for us. But one of the things that we cannot do as a nonprofit organization is tell you who to vote for. We cannot be partisan. We cannot tell you, we can't endorse candidates. I don't even personally endorse candidates. And whenever candidates reach out to me in New York City politics for an endorsement, I will listen, I do not do endorsements. I will volunteer for a campaign I believe in. I will donate to a campaign I believe in, but I do not do public endorsements because it crosses the line a little bit. And because of the position I have at my law center, I don't want to be ever in a situation where somebody can point to me and be like, get her, that N-word decided I don't ever want to do that. So I always try to be very transparent, and I bend over backwards to make sure we are well within the lines of the law. So this is not going to apply to me. It's not going to apply to other nonprofits. And I know there are a lot of nonprofits out there thinking, well, how come churches get to do this? We're nonprofit organizations. You don't even have an obligation as a church to actually give back to the community, although technically you should, because if you were a follower of Jesus, that's what you're supposed to do. But a lot of y'all say moving on. But like nonprofits, we can't do those things. And so churches cannot either. You're not supposed to be telling people who to vote for in the pulpit. But the IRS on Monday says that now churches and other houses of worship can endorse political candidates to their congregations, carving out an exemption in a decades-old ban on political activity and by tax-exempt nonprofits. The agency made the statement in a court filing intended to settle a lawsuit filed by 2 Texas churches and an association of Christian broadcasters. Friends, what kind of churches do you think made this request that they could endorse political candidates from the pulpit? What association of Christian broadcasters do you know of that would make such a request? I know of some Christian broadcast networks. I know CBN, Christian Broadcast Network. I know the Trinity Broadcast Network. I know the 700 Club. I know the PTL, Praise the Lord. Y'all remember Tammy Faye Baker and Jimmy Baker and then Pat Swaggart and all of them? Swaggart just died, actually. He's an ancestor. Shout out. But anyway, basically, the IRS is now telling the court that they're going to create a broad exemption. And this exemption is now going to allow churches to play an active role in the political nature of this country. And considering that the white churches used to be quite famous for several things, including a whole hell of devastation and disaster that they would unleash upon the people, I'm just wondering, should this be a concern? I'm really wondering, what should the black churches be doing with this information? Considering that, again, white churches, after Sunday service, when they were still in their fine Sunday service best, after church services, they would take their Sunday clothing and take them down to the local lynching mob. And they would basically form mobs of people that were going to utterly physically torture and torment black people, all in the name of white Jesus. And then they would go back to Sunday evening services. So is it these types of churches that are going to be endorsing people? Is it the types of churches that actually believe that slavery is authorized by the Bible and should be returned? Is it the type of churches that believe that gay people should be stoned to death? Are these the types of churches that are going to be making endorsements? What about your church? What will the church, because if it's like a Reverend Jamal Bryant who called for, one of the many who called for the boycott of Target, that's one thing. That's one form of political engagement, I suppose. But what if it's like the National Baptist Convention that sold out said boycott by taking $300,000 donation from Target, an entity that had previously contributed or pledged to give $1 billion in addition to depositing $250 million into black-owned banks, which they needed none of. And they just decided to make the church a cheap trick and basically give the National Baptist Convention a $300,000 donation, which you can't even use to hire 3 full-time staffers, not and pay them a living wage in New York City. I'm just saying, what kind of church gonna be making political endorsements? These are questions I would like to